I'll never forget the night I slept over at my friend Ryan's house. It was supposed to be a fun, normal night. Movies, junk food, maybe some video games until we passed out. But what happened still makes my skin crawl. Ryan lived in an old, two-story house at the end of a quiet street. The kind of place that creaked and groaned even when no one was moving. His parents were out of town, so it was just the two of us. We set up our sleeping bags in the living room, lights dimmed, the glow of the TV flickering against the walls. Around midnight, we heard it, a noise coming from upstairs. It wasn't loud, just a soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight on the wooden floor. We froze. I looked at Ryan, expecting him to laugh it off, but he was already staring at the ceiling. "There it is again," he whispered. "Your parents are gone, right?" I said. Ryan nodded slowly. We sat there, listening. Another step, closer to the stairs. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it toward the staircase. The beam of light landed on the bottom step, empty. I felt stupid. Probably just the house settling. Then we heard breathing, deep, slow, coming from the dark hallway at the top of the stairs. Ryan bolted up. "We have to get out," he muttered, grabbing my arm. But before we could move, something started coming down the stairs. Not running, not stumbling, just walking. Slow, steady footsteps. We couldn't see anything, but we felt it. A presence heavy in the air. I swear the temperature dropped. The closer it got, the more wrong it felt. Like something ancient, something that should not be there. Then, the TV screen flickered violently. Static swallowed the room. The steps stopped just out of reach of my flashlight. And then I saw it. A shape, barely visible. A face, too long, too stretched, with hollow, sunken eyes. It smiled. I grabbed Ryan and ran. We tore through the kitchen, yanked open the back door, and didn't stop until we were halfway down the street. Only then did we dare to look back. The house was silent, dark, still. Ryan refused to go back in. His parents came home the next morning to find the front door was unlocked, our stuff abandoned in the living room. But the worst part? The police found footprints. Dirt-caked, bare footprints leading from the attic down to where we had been sleeping. And the attic hatch, it was still open. It was supposed to be just another sleepover. Me and my best friend, Jason, crashing at my place while my parents were out of town. Nothing crazy, just movies, junk food, maybe staying up way too late past our bedtimes talking about dumb stuff. I lived in a small, one-story house, quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. At least that's what we thought. Around 2 a.m., we were both lying on the floor in my room, half asleep with some horror movie playing in the background. And that's when we heard it. A door closing. Jason and I locked eyes immediately. My parents were gone, and we hadn't moved. Then came the sound of slow, careful footsteps on the hardwood floor, right outside my bedroom. I sat up. My first thought was that maybe my parents had come home early. But something felt wrong. No car had pulled into the driveway. No voices. Just those deliberate, dragging steps moving toward us. Jason whispered, "Dude, someone's in your house." We scrambled up as quietly as we could, listening, waiting. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I swear I could hear breathing, shallow, ragged. Then the doorknob twisted. I didn't think. I just locked it as hard as I could a second before the door shoved inward. Somebody was on the other side, pushing. Jason grabbed his phone, frantically dialing 911. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the lock in place. Whoever was on the other side wasn't knocking, wasn't yelling, just pressing against the door, testing it, like they had all the time in the world. Then they just stopped. Silence. No breathing. No movement. Jason had the dispatcher on the line, whispering for help. That's when we heard it. A quiet click. The sound of my front door unlocking. Whoever was inside my house was letting someone else in. Jason started panicking. Dude, we have to get out of here. But we were trapped. My bedroom window was too small to fit through, and the only way out was the door that we were barely holding shut. Then footsteps again, but this time more than one pair. I thought my heart was going to explode. The dispatcher told us to stay put, that police were on their way. We could hear them, moving through the house, whispering to each other. They knew we were inside. They were waiting. Then the worst moment of my life happened. A key slid into the lock. The doorknob turned, and the door opened. A man stood there, pale, thin, his clothes filthy like he'd been wearing them for weeks. Behind him, another figure lingered in the hallway. I couldn't make out his face, but I saw something in his hand, something sharp. Before I could react, red and blue lights flooded the windows, sirens shouting. The two men bolted. Jason and I didn't move until the police burst inside, guns drawn, yelling for us. They found our back door was wide open. The lock had been picked. And the worst part? The police said they had been watching my house for over an hour, waiting for us to come out. I should have never stayed the night at Kevin's house. I'd known him for a while, sat next to him in class, played video games at lunch. He was a little awkward, but nothing that set off alarms. When he invited me for a sleepover, I didn't think twice. His house was old, the kind with wood-paneled walls and that stale, dusty smell, like no windows had been opened in years. His parents greeted me at the door, smiling a little too much, eyes lingering a little too long. "We're so happy to have you here," his mom said. His dad just stood behind her, nodding, silent, watching. Dinner was weird. Kevin's mom kept asking personal questions. Did my parents know I was here? Were they coming to pick me up? Did I have a spare key to my house? Kevin kicked me under the table, like he was telling me to ignore it. After we ate, we went to his room. That's when I noticed the locks. On the outside of his door. "You get locked in?" I joked. Kevin just shrugged. "Sometimes." I laughed, but he didn't. At around midnight, we were watching TV when there was a knock. Not on the door, on the wall, right behind Kevin's bed. His eyes darted to me, but he didn't say anything. Then from the hallway, his mom's voice. "Boys, come out here." Kevin's face went pale. "Pretend you're asleep." "What?" I whispered. He yanked the blanket over his head. I followed, heart pounding. The door creaked open, but I didn't hear footsteps. Just breathing. Slow. Measured. The air felt thick. Like whoever was standing there was just staring. After a few minutes, the door shut again. Kevin didn't move for a long time. When he finally did, whispered, "We have to leave." I followed him, stepping carefully, avoiding the spots where the floor creaked. But the moment we reached the front door, a voice familiar to us was behind us that made my stomach drop. "Going somewhere?" It was his dad, standing in the darkness. Kevin yanked the door open and we ran. Down the driveway, across the street, straight to my house, never looking back. The next day at school, Kevin wasn't there, and he never came back. I went to his house once just to see, and it was empty, like no one had lived there in years.